My name is Simcha Pearlmutter, and as you can probably see by looking at me, I am an Orthodox Jew. I live in Israel, and I have lived in Israel and in the middle of the desert in Israel for nearly 30 years. And for a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, to live in the middle of Israel, in the middle of the desert of Israel, for 30 years, one must be either a little bit crazy or having been perhaps called by God. Now, I don't know. I may be in urgent need of a psychiatrist, or it may be that I've been called by Hashem, by God, or it may be a little of both. In any case, a question arises, and I suppose you're entitled to an answer. What am I doing here? And that question, of course, has come to me before it came to you. What am I doing here? Sometimes I even look in the mirror after 30 years. I wake up in the morning and I say, what am I doing here? I've spent the best part of my days here. I came as a young man, and I probably will be going out as an old man here in the desert. What have I accomplished? What have I done? What have I intended to do? Is it just a useless life, a recluse life, the life of a hermit, alone in the desert? Or is it something that I've been called upon by God to do? And another question even before that, who is this mad rabbi in the middle of the desert of Israel? Who is this rabbi who's speaking to us now? Well, I'll try to give you some answers to those questions. The answers are long. I can't give you 30 years in just a few minutes. But I can tell you, if I have to sum up my life, that's a difficult thing for me to do. If I have to sum up my life, I can do it by telling you that there must be, prophetically it's written, there must be a voice which cries in the wilderness. In Hebrew we call that Kol Shekoreh B'Midbar, a voice which cries out in the wilderness. What does the voice say? Why is the voice there? The voice is to say, Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami. Comfort yourselves. Comfort yourselves, my people. How? Comfort ourselves with what? You see, I represent the people as every Jew does, but uniquely here in the land of Israel, and uniquely here in the desert of the land of Israel, and uniquely being an Orthodox Jew, and a rabbi yet. That voice which cries out in the desert, comfort you, my people, must be a voice that can comfort 2,000 years of wandering and persecution and death and destruction. And principally, that has come about in what we know, in what we call, in Jewish terminology, the Roman exile, the exile of the kingdom of Rome. In Jewish history, we are aware of 3 exiles. The first one being the exile to Egypt, from which we were taken out by God in the great Exodus and brought into our land. We were slaves, and from slaves we became free men, and from free men we became princes, sons of the living God, as he says in Shmois in Exodus, as he says in Exodus chapter 4, verse 22, B'ni B'chorim Yisrael, my son, my firstborn, are you, O Israel. Imagine that. Here we are, a people that came from slavery to free men, and from free men to sons of the living God. Quite a come. Quite a come. And here we are, Jewish people who are a minority of minorities, the smallest of all people, almost the smallest of all people. We are truly a minority of minorities. Probably a good figure on that, a good percentage on that would be of every 1,000 people, 2 of them are Jews. Of every 1,000 people, 2 of them are Jews. And yet, the world is divided, and we have the chutzpah to divide that world into 2 people, Jews and Gentiles, Jews and non-Jews. And you know, what makes it even funnier is that the Gentiles accept it. They realize that there are 2 creations in the world, 2 creatures in the world, Jews and those who are not Jews. And every time a non-Jew, a Gentile, introduces himself to me, he says, I'm a Gentile, we say, look what he's doing. He's actually saying, I'm not one of your minority. No one apologizes for not being Chinese, for not being Japanese, for not being Hungarian. But everyone seems to apologize for not being Jewish. The answer is that the Gentiles know, the non-Jewish people know, that in fact, and they believe it, that in fact, God did take us out of Egypt. God did make us a unique people, unique to Him, peculiar to Him, loved by Him, protected by Him, and certainly in that love and in that protection, we have known probably the worst torment of any people on the face of this earth. For what reason? And for what reason did God proclaim that He would return us, bring us back to our land? And for what reason did He say, Shuvi et shvutchem, that I will return with your return? When I bring you back, I will return as I'm in the exile with you, I will return with you. Well, I said the first exile was Egypt. The second exile was Babylon, from which we actually never fully returned. And the third exile is the exile of Rome, the longest and by far the most terrible of all. Because the persecutions that we have known over the face of the globe in the last 2,000 years have been beyond description. And therefore, over the last 30 years, for this mad rabbi to be here in Israel, in the middle of the desert, having returned from the exile, the Roman exile, as a living Jew, and being able to speak and to say, comfort yourselves, my people, here in the desert, for the last 30 years, and still surviving to be able to tell the story. Something's happening. Something is happening. Let me tell you what that something is. You see, we Jews are funny people. Even when we know the truth, even when we know the truth about certain things, we don't always tell it. And the answer to the question, why don't you tell it, is simple.